Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Olamide Olaoba and I am your grad school advisor. If you are new to this channel, Grad School Advisor provide fully funded graduate school admission tips, graduate school sustainability advice and postdoctoral career guidance. So if you want to follow more on these tips, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the notification bell and you'll be notified each time I release new videos. And so in today's business, I just want to call your attention to the series of exceptional application materials that I've started. I have discussed how to write stellar statement of purpose, and if you are yet to see this video, you can see the link in the description up here. And I've also presented or discussed about how to write a stellar academic CV. This academic CV is not just applicable to those that are seeking admission, but it's also applicable to current graduate students, postdoctoral fellows and other researchers. So if you are yet to see this video, I recommend that you also seek this video, and it is in the description above. So in today's video, I'll be talking about why it is important to include publication and test scores, standardized test scores in your application material. And the first thing I'll be talking about is the standardized tests. What are standardized tests? So standardized tests are tests written by admission seekers. It is one of the application materials that are submitted by admission seekers. So it is applicable to undergrad students and postgrad students. In the United States, for instance, the undergrads are expected to take SAT, ACT. So whereas in grad school in the United States, it is expected that you either take an academic proficiency exam or a language proficiency exam. So an example of the academic proficiency exam include MCAT, which is a medical degree entry requirement. We also have GR, which is a graduate record exam, and GMAT, which is the entry requirement for masters and PhD. An example of the language proficiency exam again includes the TOEFL, the IELTS, and Duolingo, so which are required by admission seekers that has English language as their second language, or whose undergraduate is not administered in English language. So why is this so important to take this test? I will start from the importance of this test. So firstly, I will talk about why it is important to take an academic proficiency test, such as the GRE, the GMAT, and the MCAT. So in this video, I will just specify or specialize on the GRE. So why is it so important to take the GRE test? It is important to take the GRE test because it unifies all applicants across the world. The undergraduate curriculum of a particular university in a particular country differs from university from another country. So because of this variation, it is important to unify applicants from across the world when they are applying for a grad school position. So one way to unify them is to take the general entrance exam, which is the GRE. Secondly, success in the GRE test usually assume that a particular applicant can withstand the rigor that is associated with taking a graduate school education, or better put, that success in the GRE test usually represent that a particular student can undergo a successful graduate training. However, a lot of schools actually refute this claim that GRE does not adequately represent the ability of a particular student to undergo a successful graduate training. Nevertheless, tons of schools require GRE as part of the application material, and when it is required, I encourage that students should submit a good GRE score. And when that happens, a particular student has strengthened his or her application in one way or the other. So another very important reason why GRE score or the submission of your GRE test is important is that it actually helps to amend deficits in student academic record, especially for students whose undergrad is below the entry requirement. For instance, in the case of the United States, the entry requirement for the entry GPA is 3.0, minimum of 3.0. Usually we have some schools that requires 3.2, 3.5. So but usually you have the minimum GPA requirement as 3.0, sometimes 2.5, but it is on a very rare case. On the scale of 4, I must say that this is on the scale of 4. So it is possible that a student is interested in going to grad school, and they do not meet this entry requirement. And when that's happened, it's one of those ways to amend this deficit or amend these challenges or shortcoming is by taking a GRE test. And your success in that test may say a lot about your readiness to undergo a successful graduate training. So let's talk about the language proficiency. Like I've mentioned, this includes the TOEFL, the IELTS, and the Duolingo. I'm aware that a lot of universities may have different requirements. All of these tests represent a language proficiency exam. Some schools prefer one to the other, or some schools do not have preference about which of these tests you'll be taking. In Europe, a lot of schools in Europe will prefer IELTS, whereas a lot of schools in the United States will prefer TOEFL. But be that as it may, I encourage admission seekers, graduate school admission seekers, to confirm the required test before they actually take any of these tests. So who are those people that are eligible or that are required to take the language proficiency exam? So if you come from a country where English language is it's not your first language, or if it's just a second language, you are required to take this test. If your undergraduate is not administered in English, you are also required to take this test. However, if English language is an official language in your country, and you have also if it's a second language but official language in your country, or maybe your undergraduate is also administered in English, you can request an English language waiver. So a lot of schools will grant applicants waiver for language requirements based on this ground. So having said that, I want to talk about the requirements, test requirement statement that you always find on the graduate school application page or the program page. So it is when you are putting an application there, I encourage you to visit the program, the department website, and study the entry requirement, study the application requirement. It is important, especially under the test scores. You may find statements that describes the requirement of a particular test, like GRE. So you will often find statement like it is required. So when you find statement like GRE is required, it means that it is required. And usually if GRE is not included, your application may not be considered a complete application. Secondly, you may find words like it is not required. In that case, if you submit GRE as part of your application material, it will not be reviewed. It will be eliminated from your application material. And that is if you will also not be penalized for it. And lastly, you may have statements like GRE is not required but recommended. When you have such statement, it is tricky. It is telling you that we do not require GRE, but if you do have it, you can submit. And in that case, if you have it, it can compensate for some other shortcomings. And if your application is already strong without GRE, if you have GRE and you had GRE again, it just makes your application stand out. So if you are in a situation whereby you need to apply to a program where GRE is not required but recommended, and again you have some shortcomings in your application materials, I encourage that you write and submit a good GRE score, and this will definitely amend your deficit. So having said that, I also want to discuss publication and why publication is an important aspect of your application material. So a publication represents, or let me say, it's just a peer review articles. Not just that, it may be in form of research, maybe in form of review, short communication, case report, and in the case of those in non-STEMs like mass communication, it may just be an editorial, newspaper editorial or magazine. So whatever it may be, it is just an organized, well-crafted write-up that targets members of your field. And why is this important? It is important because it represents your writing samples. A lot of program requires that a student submit their writing sample, and why you may submit other samples other than a publication. I want to argue that a publication represents the best writing sample you can submit for as part of your application material. So Secondly, it is a proof of your research output. Usually you would have included your research experience in your CV or your statement of purpose. So when you are also including your publication, it represents the evidence of your research experience, the evidence of your research output. So it makes your application stand out. And lastly, under this application, I'll just be discussing why it is important to submit your publication or standardized test score like the GRE test score. Exceptional application material will usually contain these two. Don't forget, I am only discussing exceptional application material, not just application material. And what makes an application material exceptional does not necessarily mean that a student previously has an exceptional academic record. You may be an average student and determined to submit an exceptional application material. You may even be below average and determined to submit an exceptional application to a graduate school. So it doesn't matter. If you are an exceptional student and lack exceptional application material, you may not make it through to an application. But if you are an average student, you submit an exceptional application material, you submit all these materials that I've been talking about in various videos and in this video, definitely your application will stand out. I want to maintain again that exceptional application material will include these two important materials: your publication record and your standardized test results. This information is especially for students that desire to secure fully funded PhD position directly from their undergrad without having to undergo a master's degree. Such applicants will definitely need to present either of these two or both of them. So my first preference will be, if you can, publish, and again write this test, especially if it is required, submit both of them. My second preference is, if you cannot do these two, make sure you ensure your success on a standardized test score. Or if you don't want to write a standardized test, make sure you have a lot of publications that you can submit, be it research or review, especially if you want to secure a PhD position and you are a STEM student. For non-STEM students, you may present some of your work. If you are a mass communication student, if you have contributed to an editorial, a magazine, you may also need to present the proof of this work. And lastly, I want to talk about the bonus tips I have that I said I want to tell you. And this bonus tip was given to me during my own application by my mentor Babajide Ojo, and I applied it and it worked for me, and I also want to share these tips with you. So what I want to tell you is, identify an important hot topic in your area. Having identified that, make a video recording of an organized teaching or presentation of this subject area, and with the aim of teaching this topic not to professionals but those that want to learn this topic. So you must teach it as though you want to impact knowledge, not a show of how much you know, but a show of passion to impact what you have learned so far about this hot topic. Having done that, upload this video teaching on your YouTube channel, and during your application process, submit a link to this video, and let this serve as a proof, a demonstration of your teaching ability, your teaching experience, especially if you desire to apply for a teaching assistance position. Before I end this video, I just want to remind you that it is important to include your publication record and your standardized test score, especially if it is required. So when you have these two on your application material, it strengthens your application and it makes your application stand out. And so I have come to the end of this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified each time I release new videos. See you in the next video.